I also thought that I had to kind of take on this whole costume in order to be a therapist. And so I bought this whole new set of clothes. It was funny because it wasn't quite me. I felt like, a kid dressing up in their parents' business casual clothes. And the other thing was that I thought that I had to now speak in this very breathy, slow, you know, you know what I'm talking about, therapist speak. Welcome to How to Trust Yourself, the podcast for anyone who's done with the endless second guessing and ready to tune in to your inner guidance. I'm Anna Holtzman, and I get that feeling of trudging through life like you're wading through mud, trying to figure out which way to go. In my 20s, I spent more time asking what should I do with my life than writing about crushes or bad dates in my journal. I've tried on a lot of answers: architecture, publishing, editing reality TV for a decade, and finally landing on therapy and coaching, helping people like you connect with your purpose. But here's the thing I've learned through all those twists and turns. Trusting yourself is the key to moving forward, even when the path feels messy. So if you're ready to stop doubting yourself and start listening to your gut, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Welcome back, dear listener. I wanted to record a short episode for you today because of something that someone recently said in my visibility group, Seen and Safe. One of the members of my group, during a discussion that we were having, she said something along the lines of, "I'm so tired and bored of being known by my credentials." She is someone who um, has medical credentials, and she's also someone who is and does a lot more than what those credentials imply. She's a spiritual person. She's a leader. She is a group facilitator. She is a very multifaceted and creative human being. And she was basically saying, like, I'm just so, I feel like these credentials, they kind of lifted me up initially into the work that I do now. But now that I've been doing it for a while, the credentials sort of feel like a cage or a trap, and they are hemming me in and preventing me from expressing the fullness of who I am. But at the same time, it's a little bit scary to let go of them because there's a sense of security that these credentials provide. And when she shared that, it was like a domino effect going around the Zoom room that we were all in, or like ping, 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 ping. You could just see this look of recognition on so many people's faces, including my own. I don't know if you've noticed or not, but I don't often refer to my credentials, which are LMHC, licensed mental health counselor. Um, Not that there's anything wrong with anyone who chooses to state their credentials. I just don't say them often because I feel similarly. I feel a little hemmed in by that, as if those credentials are claiming to be my identity when they're not. I mean, they're a part of my professional, I guess, accomplishments, but they don't really communicate who I am as a person. That's just how I personally feel about it. And it's so many people in this group related, and whether or not they had medical credentials or mental health credentials or not, everyone seemed to relate in some way of this idea that we use our education or our professional title, or we can use them as sort of a protective mask that makes us feel safe in some way, makes us feel like we will be accepted, makes us feel like people will hire us. Um, and at the same time, we can feel like that mask is separating us from really letting ourselves be seen, letting our true and full selves be seen. And so, I wanted to share a little story about this from my own personal experience and how I've navigated and have been navigating this. So, I have changed careers multiple times during the course of my life thus far. And the most recent big shift was about 10 years ago when I left the career I had had as a video editor working in reality TV for 10 years. And I went back to grad school to become a licensed therapist. And when I was first stepping into that new role, you know, let me take a step back here for a moment actually, just to say, like, why is it that we find ourselves, um, being propped up by, but then also sometimes feeling caged in by these credentials or these professional titles or these masks? And I think one of the reasons is that when we're kids, as children, we really get rewarded for following, for doing things the way someone else told us to do them, for fitting into a role, for looking a certain way that's prescribed, for behaving a certain way that we're being taught to behave. We get rewarded for following. And so later on, when we are adults living our adult life, this idea of stepping into leadership, coming into our own, can present some inner conflicts because we've been conditioned to follow and to replicate and to do a good job at doing it the way someone else did it or looking the way someone else looks, fitting into a role. And so when I first stepped into the role of being a professional therapist, it's funny to me looking back on it. Not because I think there was anything wrong at all with my process. I think this is incredibly common, but it's just sort of sweet to me. So in the beginning, I thought that I had to get a whole new wardrobe to wear in order to be a therapist and a peer professional because I was coming from working in reality TV where it's extremely informal. Not that the world of therapy is formal in like a business blazer sense, but in television, would just wear like really ratty clothes sometimes and just, come in like a ripped t-shirt or grungy jeans. And there's a lot of just like body humor that goes on in that environment and acting tough and um you using humor as a defense mechanism. At least that was my experience of it. And yeah, dressing in a particular way that I did not think fit the role of a therapist, and talking in a particular way that I did not think fit the role of a therapist. Um, and maybe there is something to that, but I also thought that I had to kind of take on this whole costume in order to be a therapist. And so I bought this whole new set of clothes, kind of a lot in the style of Eileen Fisher, if you're familiar with that brand, like flowing, linens, things that fit really loose, and just colors that were subdued and muted. And it just it was funny because it wasn't quite me. I felt like, a kid dressing up in their parents' business casual clothes. Like it just none of it really quite fit. And and the materials that I chose, like, just weren't right for me. I was sweating in them. It just wasn't comfortable. It was the opposite of what it's supposed to, like, feel comfortable and grounded and soothing, but because these clothes were a misfit for me, it just none of it felt quite right. Um, And because it just wasn't how I would naturally style myself, I sort of didn't know what I was doing, and the colors didn't match, the materials didn't go together, it was just kind of a mess. And the other thing was that I thought that I had to now speak in this very breathy, slow, you know you know what I'm talking about, therapist speak, and that I couldn't use any swear words and just had to really change my whole language. And here's where that landed me. I think it's fine that I started off that way. I think that that's a place to start, and that's where a lot of us start when we're stepping into something that's new and unfamiliar. It's new territory. We might start out by just trying to mimic something that we've seen. And again, there's nothing wrong with that because that's a way to get started. It's a way to step in. But once I had stepped in and gotten there, I found myself feeling itchy and sweaty and just feeling not myself in these clothes. Um, a lot of them I never even wore, and I was able to return them, so there was not a lot lost there. But, and then in terms of, like, how I was speaking and, like, kinda holding myself, I was in the process of using or exploring mind body medicine to help me with what had been chronic migraine, and I was sort of coming out of it, but still getting pretty frequent headaches. And I found that speaking in this particular way and just kinda, like, holding myself in this persona that wasn't quite me was creating this web of tightness around my head and my face and my neck, and by the end of the day of, seeing clients while inhabiting this not quite me persona, I would have a headache most days. It was leading to me having headaches. So, my body was clearly telling me, "This is not working." Being a persona that's not really you is not working for you. It's not First of all, you're not gonna get through the day feeling like yourself, and you're not gonna get through the day without it causing some kind of physical discomfort or pain. So, this isn't gonna work. And second of all, it's preventing me from really connecting with my clients in an embodied way, in a way that would not only feel better and more free to me, but that would create an atmosphere of permission and self-trust for them, and that's really what I'm here to support my clients with, is connecting in with their own intuition, their own self-trust, stepping into permission to be themselves and to be fully expressed. So how on earth could I support others with that if I wasn't embodying it myself? And so it was a process of getting into that. And, I started with just little experiments, like just working some of my regular clothes that were work appropriate, but also felt like me back into my wardrobe, experimenting just step by step with talking a little bit more like me, bringing my humor into it, sharing things that are personal to me where appropriate, where it was something that I could contribute to the client's experience. And little by little, and also by listening to podcasts of other therapists who were very much themselves, very much just being them and not inhabiting the kind of stereotypical therapist persona. And little by little, I gradually found my way into my own comfort zone of being myself in this new role, and it felt so much better. I stopped getting the headaches at the end of the day. I stopped sweating in my clothes and feeling itchy, and, of course, I felt so much more connected with my clients. The work became so much more fun, so much more intuitive, so much more fluid, and obviously, that showed up in the experiences clients were having and the results that they were experiencing too. In an atmosphere that builds a sense of inner self-trust, where you feel empowered to get in touch with your intuition, where you feel a sense of permission. This is a word I've heard from clients over and over again, that they feel permission to be themselves while, in the space that we co-create together. And from that permission has come so many beautiful things. Clients have published books that they didn't even realize they were sitting on and stewing on for years. Those books have come to fruition. Clients have left relationships that weren't working for them for a very, very long time. They have found soulmates that they weren't necessarily uh, open to before feeling that permission. They've started families when they didn't feel like they had things together enough to do that. But stepping into permission, they stepped into that journey and they're on the journey. I've had clients step into bigger leadership roles, feeling that sense of inner permission. Clients who started businesses that they were circling around for years and years. And it's not that they were suddenly more prepared or had more credentials. It was that sense of inner permission to step into it. And so these are some of the things that I learned from letting the mask of the the proper attire and the quote unquote proper way of speaking fall away, letting the cage of the credentials fall away. Not that, the credentials are still there, but they are not defining my persona. They're not defining the way that I show up in the world and express myself. And things feel so much freer. And my invitation to you, if you are relating to any of this, if you're seeing yourself in some of those caged in feelings and wanting to experience more freedom in your self expression, I invite you to just simply start with awareness. Let go of self judgment and start with just the awareness of noticing when it feels like you're performing. How do you know that it feels like you're performing? Do you feel a particular tightness in a certain part of your body? Do you feel it in your thoughts? Do you feel it in your clothing? How do you notice when you're playing a role, and what does that feel like for you in your body? And there's nothing wrong with you for finding yourself in that performance, because we all do. This is a totally normal thing. We're conditioned to perform. And when you notice it, I invite you to try this little exercise. It might sound silly, but just verbalize permission to yourself or write it down on a piece of paper. Verbalize or write down to yourself, I have permission to be myself, to talk like myself, to dress like myself, to show up as myself in this particular role. And find a friend to have a conversation about it with so that they can reinforce it with you. And if this is the kind of thing that you would like support with from a coach, get in touch. This is my jam. This is what I do. This is what I love co-creating with clients around. You can find me at my email, anna@annaholtzman.com. You can visit me at my website, annaholtzman.com. And you can always send me a message or a voice message on Instagram and my DMs, Anna_Holtzman. Let me know what this episode sparked for you. I love to hear your comments and feedback. And until next time, take good care. If you enjoyed today's episode, please do me a favor. Hit that follow button so you don't miss a thing and leave a rating or review. It helps more people find this show, and honestly, it makes my day. And if you're looking for more ways to trust yourself and start listening to that gut instinct of yours, come hang out with me on Instagram at Anna_Holtzman. Let's keep the conversation going. Thanks so much for listening, and until next time, trust yourself. You've got this.